This weekend's quarterfinals was one of the most intense I've seen in recent years. They were unexpected results, joy, heartbreak. It was just everywhere. It was the end of an era for a number of legends of the game, most notably Johnny Sexton and Biggar. And all of the victories across the board were hard fought and set up two incredible semi-finals. Starting with the Argentina-Wales game, if I were a betting man, I would have said that was one of the easiest ones that Wales would get in a long time. But of course, that didn't go that way. Uh, and there were sadly, however, few things that clearly went wrong in the game, and I feel Wales didn't do themselves some favours with the team selection. I understand Dan Biggar, Liam Williams, they are two brilliant players, and they can change the complex of a game very easily. But playing them still clearly injured was not the right call. You could see that they were trying, they just couldn't keep up with the pace and perform at their regular best. And that was a shame. And that made it difficult for the Welsh team to be as effective as they needed to be. The first half was chaos, but slowly but surely Argentina started putting together phases, putting together the type of play that got them the victory in the end. And it was very clear when the veteran Augustine Creevy got into the field. They just brought some calm, and that just sealed it for the Argentinians. And it was only going to go one way from there. The Ireland-New Zealand game was probably one of the most beautiful games I've seen in a very long time. The Irish team displayed their technical brilliance, and they were just exceptionally well disciplined once again. New Zealand also showed that they still have that ability just to completely break open a game at the drop of a hat. The only difference for me was that one moment that there was the gap left in Ireland's defence that resulted in Mwanga splitting them open and putting Will Jordan away for his try. And it just goes to show what New Zealand can do if they get that one chance in the game. Nobody can disagree. The Irish deserve to be in a semi-final, having equalled the New Zealand record. But the cruelness of the draw resulted in them getting knocked out at the quarterfinal once again. In the England-Fiji game, I had a lot of criticism for some of the things that the English team did during the game that I felt weren't in the spirit of the game, and I still do stand by that. That being said, they faced an absolute onslaught from the Fijians. Physically, they were just getting pounded consistently, but they found a way to weather that storm and got the needed points on the board when it really counted. And now they're in a semi-final. Fiji played brilliantly for many parts of the game, but when it counted, they lost their structure. It was just an indication for me once again that yes, they had evolved greatly as a team, but when they get into these types of situations, their lack of top level Test rugby just did them in. If they had been in these types of situations regularly over the past couple of years, it might have been different. But they just weren't able to keep that structure to put it together enough constructive phases to overcome England. England were, however, able to make the right decisions at the right time during the game to make sure that they got the win. And Farrell's drop goal was a game changer to get the score from 24 to 27-24. And to be very honest, you only needed to look at Marcus Smith's face after the game and the many shots during the game to see how badly this England team wanted it. For that, you need to give them credit. If there was ever a game of interest, the France-South Africa game was that. The South African team played a hard-hitting game, but brought in a couple of touches of finesse that wasn't expected, and I thought that was an interesting adaptation to what the situation was. The 5-3 split was also another bit of a shock, but it worked out for them in the end. The French matched the South African team and clearly outplayed them with some of their deft touches, and they split open that South African defence a couple of times. The French, however, carried the weight of a nation, and I think, sadly, Dupont carried the most of that, which I felt was a little bit unfair on the guy. And although he was on the field, he just wasn't the same dominant force that he's been for months now for this French team. And I feel bad for him for that in particular. The only thing that was the difference between these two teams was literally that charge down penalty or charge down conversion by Cheslin Colby. And yeah, now we set up with a very juicy semi-final between the two 2019 finalists. The losers of the weekend, it would be a little bit unfair to just point out any team here because there wasn't any team that gave anything less than their absolute best. The first loser of the weekend was inconsistent officiating. Officiating in test matches has to be extremely hard because it doesn't matter what decision you come up with, you're always going to have one side not agreeing with you, and that makes it very, very difficult. I'm not passing judgment on any of these calls, but there were some clear inconsistencies in a couple of these situations, and the two that come to mind are that Aaron Smith got a yellow card for his deliberate knockdown, but Farrell didn't. In the Wales versus Argentina game, there were two instances where there was head contact, and they considered it and they thought, okay, no, it wasn't really an issue. However, Habosi and Etzebet for Fiji and South Africa respectively, they got yellow cards where you could have had the same argument. And then there was no sanction for the Tom Curry tackle. We could have ended the career of Tui Silva with that chop tackle without arms, and Tui Silva also landed on his neck and head, and there was nothing for that. Now that left there, I'm not trying to pass judgment on any of those. The important thing just to get from this is there was inconsistency, which is very sad. So that is something that needs to be figured out from World Rugby and the refereeing panel. The second loser of the quarterfinals was clearly the pool draws. Draw was done in 2020 already, and it was clearly lopsided. On the one side of the draw, in two of the pools, you had the top 5 teams in the world, while on the other side, a lot of the lower ranked teams were playing each other. Based on recent form, you would have said it would have made sense to see New Zealand, France, Ireland, and South Africa in the semi-finals rather than knocking each other out at the quarterfinals. So this definitely needs to be relooked. Then in terms of winners, I'm not going to highlight a team, but I'm going to highlight 3 players who really epitomized that winning spirit in terms of how they helped their teams to get over the line. In third place, I have to mention Cheslin Colby. He literally put everything into every play that he took part in. He kept chasing down kicks. He got his tackles. Yes, he scored that brilliant try, but you could see the hunger that he had for trying to help South Africa in whichever way possible. And that was just clear where Pollard kicked the penalty from just behind the halfway line to make it 29-25. He chased that quick all the way down until it landed on the other side of the uprights. And then, of course, the charge down of Ramos's conversion attempt, which could have been the difference between South Africa having a chance in the semi-finals and going out of the tournament. In second place, Ardie Savea. He was just an absolute behemoth for the All Blacks, and the whole team were impressive, but he definitely stood out from the lot. He put in the tackles and he put in the bullock and piercing runs and scored spectacularly, but he also competed fiercely and accurately at the rucks, and you could see that every single thing that he took part in, he did with absolute conviction and absolute heart. And his performance, I feel, in a big way, drove the New Zealand team to victory in many regards. Then in first place, I have to put Ben Olde. In England's first game of the World Cup, when they played Argentina, I actually heard that he wouldn't have originally been in the squad, and that was an absolute shocker. And if you just judged his performance in that very first game, and then you judge his performance in this semi-final game, you can't imagine how the England team would have fared without him. To be very honest, the way that he performed against Fiji was an absolute rock star performance. Didn't see what his player rating was for that, but if he didn't get a 10 out of 10, I would have been absolutely shocked. England were taking a physical beating in many aspects of the game. Just look at Marcus Smith facing it. But one person actually stood strong through all of that, and he was able to turn over balls at ruck time, secure a couple of rucks for his team. He also put in the tackles when it was needed, and he had a few runs where he just got through that line like there wasn't any defenders there. He was just a ball of energy on attack and defense, and you could see the passion and the will that he played with. And I must credit him for that. He was absolutely, absolutely spectacular. Overall, just an amazing weekend of rugby, but there were flaws, and the flaws were mostly in terms of the system possibly letting down how this World Cup played out. But that is a discussion for after the World Cup.